There we go.
That's not good.
It's been a long day.
It's been a long 10 minutes.
Yeah. We're live.
Yeah.
We're live.
We are live. Samantha, if you want to take over so we can get rid of the sound issue.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Samantha Martin from Frolic Media, the entertainment brand for modern romance fans. And I'm so excited to be here today with HelenKay Dimon, Suzanne Park, Mia Sosa, and Alisha Rai. I don't know if you guys want to introduce yourselves, or I can read the brief bios that I pulled from your website, whatever works for you. Maybe if HelenKay, you would like to go first, just introduce yourself, what you write, what you're...
Oh, hi. I'm HelenKay Dimon. I write contemporary romance and romantic suspense. Under another name, I write very non-romantic things, but that's not today. And I don't know what else. I'll pass it on here.
All right. How about you go, Mia?
Hi, I'm Mia Sosa, and I write contemporary romance. My tagline, which I like to break out every once in a while, is funny, flirty, a little dirty.
Ooh, I love that.
I'm taking issue
awesome.
with it. Then I need to reassess the a little dirty part.
How about you, Alisha?
Yeah, I'm Alisha Rai. I write contemporary romance and rom-coms. My latest series is called Modern Love. The Right Swipe is the first book in the series, and then the second one is Girl Gone Viral. It's my latest release. And it's about 3 women who happen to be tech entrepreneurs and roommates, and so their shenanigans as they find love.
Awesome. And Suzanne?
Hi, Suzanne Park. I write romantic comedies set in the workplace. This book is coming out on Tuesday, really soon. And it's a workplace comedy set in the video game industry. And it's really soon coming out. So very excited about this.
Amazing. So yeah, I just want to take a second to thank Bookstore Romance Day for making this possible. Bookstore Romance Day was created in 2019 as a way to create a love match between independent bookstores and the romance community. It was a classic enemies to lovers tale. For too long, indies weren't embracing romance books, but now with this initiative, we're on our way to our very own HEA. So thank you so much, Bookstore Romance Day, for gathering us all here today. And I have some great questions for you guys, so hopefully we will have a great discussion. So this can be for anyone or everyone. What is your favorite genre to write? Why? Not all at once.
favorite genre to write? Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
I really do love contemporary. I think it's, you can pull in a lot of one of the challenges and one of the great parts about it is that you can't, just have a ghost come in and solve all your problems. Like, you have to build it in the world that we live in right now. But I also really love paranormal, and the minute people want zombies again, I'm ready. I'm ready to write my zombie romances. I'm all in.
I want zombies. So please.
I'm on it. But those are probably my 2 favorite. I love paranormal and contemporary.
Awesome.
I love to write romantic suspense. There's something about kind of the mix of like high passion and high danger that I really like, because I think when you're falling in love, everything is like up here, right? Like, it's not calm. It's like everything feels intense and big. And then, if on top of that, they also have to run from somebody who's trying to kill them or figure out how to get out of an exploding helicopter, it just takes all of the risk and takes it through the roof. And I kind of love that piece where they're fighting through everything, and then they figure out that now that the danger's passed, they want to go on together. I love that.
Yeah, for sure.
I like writing romantic comedies and contemporary women's fiction. And I think a lot of the things that I write usually have a strong coming of age element, because I like to write about awkward, nerdy new love. And with that comes a component of people kind of going through things personally as well. So those are the types of stories I like to
write. And I write contemporary romance. That's what I love. That's what I like to read. That's how I got into romance as a reader. And I would say if there were any place I would go like as a fantasy, it would be historical romance. But I just don't have it in me to, I don't think, to write it. I just feel like that is, the people who write historical romance do it so well. And I don't know that I would want to get into that, but I like to listen to it. And it is the only way that I would have ever known that it was Marquis, not Marquise. And so, you know, it's stuff like that that I'm like, wow, there's a whole other world that I could be writing. But I'm going to leave it to the folks who are really good at it.
Yeah, speaking of writing in more than one genre, for those of you who have written books in various genres throughout your career, what are some of the challenges that you would say you faced while jumping from one genre to another?
Within romance, I've written both contemporary and romantic suspense, and then I've written outside of the romance genre, and it's a different. When I write a romance, the personal connections are different. Like I love, like I'm the reader you want, because I love when I read the first book. I am the person who wants the next door neighbor's story, 6 cousins, a sister, and a friend. I am that person, and I will buy all of them because I'm a completion person. I can't just read one book out of a series. I will read all of them. And I love that piece about romance. It's kind of like this building of a community that is so much bigger than just one family unit. It's a found family feeling that comes from the people that we let into our lives, friends, etc. And I love that. And then, you know, I go and I just finished writing a domestic suspense where I basically take that and then blow it apart. So it's a very different kind of back and forth. But I do think the very unique thing about romance is the kind of sense of community building in these stories. Even in a standalone, there is just this sense of this bigger, wider world, and I really love that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think romance is one of the few genres where you can kind of have it all. You know, whether it's sci-fi or contemporary or historical or whatever. And that was, I think, what drew me to it as, you know, a kid who couldn't really focus when I was 12 or 13. I could read everything and anything and still have sort of that core underlying happily ever after. So that's, I think, you know, what is easy probably about jumping between the subgenres. Like I you know, I'm writing a YA now and it's still romance, you know, it's just a different age group.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is one of the joys of the genre is even when you write in the different subgenres, you can still find something that ties all your work together.
But it's a different sensibility when you're writing YA, right? Like, you know what I mean? It's when you're writing YA, is it a different? I've never written, like I've only ever written adult. Is it a different feeling, like because it's not a happily ever after? Is there I don't know. I've just always wondered.
I think though for teens, it's always a happily ever after. You know, right? There's like that sense of immediacy. They're not really thinking for like, oh, are we gonna grow up and be like rocking and rocking? At least the teens I know. Maybe you know.
No, I write YA too, and it is that they still get their happily ever afters, or if you're being especially cruel, they're happily happy for nows. But no, I'm kidding. But I think what is the difference is just their life experiences, and then the voice, and making sure that's authentic. Because people can smell that from a mile away if it's not an authentic teen voice, and that's the tricky part, I think, when you write YA.
Very cool.
Suzanne, I have to say, I read The Perfect Escape so long ago, and it is one of my favorite books of all time. So I am so excited to be talking to you. I absolutely love it. I definitely felt that Nate and Kate are going to live happily ever after. At least I hope so. So thank you for that.
They had a happily
so we have a lot of questions from the chat. Awesome. So we have some questions from the chat that people, it looks like they're upvoting their questions. So we can see which ones they would like answered. So someone asks, what inspired you to start writing romance?
I can go first. I was practicing law in Washington, D.C., and I was at the point in my career when I was working really hard and up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, writing briefs and wondering, is there anything else to this life? I had 2 young kids at home, and I thought, let me see if I can reassess what I'm doing. And so I remember being in Minnesota on a case and being stuck there, not because of the weather in Minnesota, but the weather in Washington, D.C. It was that huge snowstorm years ago. I was stuck there for an extra 3 days. The case that I was working on had settled, and I had nothing to do. And I got on my laptop and I started to just write. I had and it was a romance, but it had no plot. I didn't know where it was going. But I think that was the first time that I thought, well, maybe I could do this. And so when I decided to stay home, I kind of, for maybe a year, was like, oh, I'm just gonna relax. And then I was like, no, I'm really not. So maybe 4 months into that, I was like, yeah, I want to figure out something else to do. And I turned to romance and joined Romance Writers of America. And pretty quickly after that, got a sense of what it would take to get published and started to meet all of these wonderful people. And then I was off to the races.
Yeah, I think there's far too many lawyers in this window right now.
A lot.
Survey.
I mean, like I mentioned, I started reading romance when I was like 12 or 13. I was very young, and it was like my first love. I loved it so much. I would smuggle those books home. I wasn't really allowed to read them. I would hide them in my textbooks to read them when I was supposed to be studying. Like, I loved those books. And I love the community too. Like, this was in sort of this is in the 90s, the early ages of the internet. And there was a whole internet community that I could find. And, they didn't know I was a teenager maybe, but, we could talk about it. But, and, it was always sort of in the back of my head, like, I'm going to write romance. But, life kind of takes us in weird ways. And my first book came out actually the March before I started law school. I took like a bit of a gap between college and law school. I was working, and then, I went back to law school. And so I wrote all through law school, and it was like the only joy in my life was writing those books and having them published, and people not knowing that I wrote them, so they wouldn't because law school students are the worst. Law's great. You should all go into it. But and so I just kept it up. And then, I worked to try to find a job to manage along with my writing because I didn't want to give that up. So I think it is like escapism and just like a nice way to, especially when there is something that you're like passionate about. Like, I was passionate about these books from the time I was a child. So.
I'm the third lawyer that's now going to talk. I was Mia and I probably crossed each other's paths. I worked in the DC area, mostly outside of Montgomery County, Maryland, and I was a contested custody specialist. Not kidding. That's our firm did all kinds of family work, and usually if it was a contested custody case, I was the one that got to try it in the courtroom. And that is the least romantic career on earth, really. I did not read romance at that time, and somebody in my office handed me 3 romances, and I read them and I loved them. I had always been an avid reader. I read them and I loved them, and like Mia, started thinking, maybe there's something else I could do here. At the time, so this is in like 2005, something like that. Lori Foster used to run this contest on her website back when people had blogs, and she would pick her top 20 favorites, and she handed them to her editor at Kensington. And a lot of us met that way, like Shannon Stacy, J.C. Burton, Sylvia Day, Larissa Ione. We were all kind of like in that group. And I was a finalist, and I still wasn't sure like if I had it in me to write a book. And I talked with Kate Duffy, who's no longer alive, but she was the editorial director at Kensington. And she read the first 3 pages, and she said to me, I'm going to be your editor one day, but not today. And then like told me, here's what I think your strengths are. Here's what I think your weaknesses are. I want you to take this book idea and put it aside. And now I want you, knowing that, to pick something else. And then you're going to send it directly to me, and we're going to do this again. And we did it 2 times. And from the first time she called, it was like 18 months. And then she bought my first book.
Oh,
I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, very happy. A lawyer's story that ends happy.
I'm not a lawyer. My brother's a lawyer.
Oh, you're Jason.
I do have a wasted MBA degree, but I don't know if that counts. I think for me, I was just in this era of watching a lot of rom-com movies of the like late 1990s and then early 2000s, and also read a lot of chick lit during that chick lit era. In addition to that, I was reading Anne Rice. I think all of that put together, plus not seeing any Korean Americans in any story that I'd ever tried to pick up, and saw there's no characters that look like me. I felt like I needed to try to change that.
Very cool.
That's awesome. So we have a question here from Michelle, and she says, my 13-year-old niece is finishing her first book. Would you have any advice for a young writer who is just starting, or any advice you received that you wish you had received when you were just starting out?
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
That's wonderful. And I definitely, like, my first works were Nancy Drew fan fiction at 13 and 12. So I'm very proud of her, and she can go very far. I would say the best thing that I did as like a young author was that I had a little group of friends, and we would all read each other's work and provide like our little team critique to each other. So I think she should just find a group of friends. And if, like the internet, obviously supervise it, but like the internet to find sort of like-minded people to help you out, and someone who's going to give you honest feedback, I think is invaluable. Honest is true. But yeah.
Do they have writer groups for kids that young? I don't know.
They do at like some local libraries. Like my local library does that. Like they have a summer writing program for teens, which I think is like, I was reading about it when I was there last time. So I think that there are like local ones, but I'm sure that there's critique groups that have formulated on TikTok or something.
My daughter is writing fan fiction for a series, middle grade series called Wings of Fire. So she and her little buddies are just writing things and making videos and whatever. I think that really helps, and she found her little fandom and her little group. They also are on Google Docs just writing things and critiquing each other, kind of what Alisha was saying. And then she's also because we're stuck in the pandemic and not really knowing what to do with her, she's taken a few writing classes throughout Schools. I think that's the name of it. But there's some classes you could take that just get you used to writing. I think they get prompts every day, and it helps her, just to have something to do every day and keep at it. Her fanfiction is pretty good.
I kind of want to join her group if it makes you write every day.
There's like a bunch of 10 to 12-year-olds, writing and editing, and the edit notes are really funny.
I think in terms of advice, something that I wish someone had told me sooner is not to worry so much about writing the perfect book the first time around, but to get the words out there. And I really do think a lot of the magic happens in revision once you have the sort of the bones of your story together. I tend to torture myself over the first chapter, and it is the cleanest chapter ever because I go over it over and over and over again. And, I need to learn, and I still need to learn to get beyond that and to just sort of write and be free for a bit and then return to it and revise it, because that's kind of where a lot of the work happens.
I found that a looming deadline will get me right over that hump real quick. I gotta move on.
You would think, Alicia, but no. I'll be 3 weeks away, chapter 1.
You gotta let that a little bit.
So for contemporary writers, we have a question here that says, as contemporary authors, do you have any ideas about how you'll be dealing with 2020 in future books?
Oof. Yeah. I've struggled with this.
2020 pop culture references.
I've struggled with this question, and and I'm struggling with this now as I revise a book. I think that the way that I've come out is that this is a pre-COVID-19 pandemic world. There are just so many things that I think don't work if you're thinking about the things that we're thinking about now. I mean, just practical things. I've got a scene where they're these folks are getting hot and passionate against a wall, and I'm thinking, ooh, wall in a public space. Ooh, I can do that. I want that scene. And so I have to put it in a place and hope that there are enough readers who kind of want to take that journey and are okay with sort of setting aside that part of our reality. Just because I think in my head, it just makes it so complicated to try and do that and to not have people think about it. I mean, practically speaking, are we talking about hey, come on over? And the heroine has her, some hand sanitizer. It just doesn't feel right.
I mean, I think I'm very grateful that I'm not writing any kind of a one night stand or a hookup right now, because I don't think I can do that. It's where have they been? Have they been wearing a mask? Have they been washing their hands? You don't know. So I think that's where my brain's at right now. But as far as I don't know if anyone's seen Community, but there's an episode where they roll a dice and then each number comes up as an alternate reality of what could happen. And that's the way I kind of feel right now when I'm writing, where I'm okay, I'm rolling the dice. What reality am I going to write it? Am I writing it March 13th, 2020? Am I writing it now? Am I writing it what I predict the future is going to be? So it's just a challenge. And I think for me, at least, it was hard to, not exactly talking about COVID or masks or hand sanitizer or anything, the practical parts of it, but just thinking about how we might be affected, going down the road. The effects of this psychologically are going to be really long lasting. And I think, I was talking to somebody about my grandma. She was born in 1922, and she was traumatized by the Spanish flu, and she wasn't even alive for it. But her parents told her stories, her siblings told her stories, And she told me those stories, like about relatives and friends and, you know, strangers. And so, like, I think about that and I'm like, okay, well, I think I do kind of have to adjust, you know, where my characters are right now. But I think the next couple of years will be interesting. I think everybody's just going to be sort of rolling that dice and we're going to see where all these books are landing. And I don't think any of them are necessarily, you know, better or worse. It's just sort of where the headspace is.
Speaking of where you guys set your books, maybe a little bit lighter, what do you like? What choices, like what steps do you go through when selecting like what city, what town, what time period, everything, where you're going to set your book? Small town versus big city? Does it sort of, I guess the real question is, do you come up with your setting before your characters, or do you have characters in mind and then like try and decide where you would want to see those characters?
I can start. My two books out this year, The Young Adult and Loathe at First Sight, coming out in 3 days. They're both set in Seattle, where I used to live. I lived there for nearly 10 years. And there's something about the city itself that lends itself to writing this city almost as a character. There's so much to the city, whether it comes to weather, the food, just the quirkiness of the people, where they refuse to have an umbrella, you know, just it's literally like only sunny, like maybe 2 or 3 months of the year. There's just something about it that's very magical to me. But I did come up with the characters before I came up with that setting, and then came up with the actual storyline and the premise. That usually goes first for me before the setting on everything. And my current book right now, she's a banker in New York, so she kind of has to be like a Wall Street person. So it's set in New York, part of it, but then also she has to go back home. And I'm from Tennessee, so I'm writing about kind of a big city, small city kind of story.
Yeah, I think for me, oh, sorry, go ahead, Helen.
No, go ahead.
No, you go.
My most recent romance series is set at what I call Whitaker Island, which is basically a made-up island near Seattle. And I wanted, it was one of those times where I think the characters and the setting kind of came together. I wanted a place where people would go to start over, begin new lives, hide, all of those kind of things, romantic suspense, all of those kind of things. And that kind of, there's something about the Pacific Northwest, and it might be the weather, that lends itself to kind of that feeling. And I wanted it on a very small island so that I could build a community, which I have jokingly called the land of misfit toys, because everybody's like a little off. And but it worked out well for people who wanted to start over. So that works well. I lived in DC area for a very long time, so I've set a lot of books there just because I know the area. So there's a comfort level that comes with it. And I am not about to take a shot at small towns, but I grew up in a very small town, and in Lancaster County, Amish country, Pennsylvania. And a lot of people write these like amazing small town, everybody's lovely, and I think small towns are a little bit more interesting than that, because there's a lot of people that you're like, wow, in a small town. So for a long time, I didn't write romances set in a small town, because I'm like, I think the romance I would write in a small town would not be like everybody's going to the bake shop on Saturday. And when people nail that, it is beautiful. Like, you want to pack your little bag and go move to that place. But that's not kind of the reality of what I know as a small town. So there's been a little bit of disconnect in trying to kind of put that together for me.
I think, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think for me, like setting is a part of the plot and the characters as well. Like it all goes part and parcel together. when I was writing Girl Gone Viral, it's set in Yuba City, which is a tiny little town north of Sacramento, and it is one of the largest Punjabi settlements, in America. And it's just this tiny little town, and it's where the majority of our peaches come from in our country. And so a lot of the peach farms are owned by, Punjabi and Mexican, farmers, and they're not like, first or second generation. They're like third, fourth, fifth generation. Their roots go really back far, which is sort of unusual for South Asians because the Asian Fusion Act kind of cut us off from immigration for a long time before 1965. Except for places like this where, these men came in like, pre-1917 and they settled down there, but they couldn't own land and they couldn't get really married because of the anti-miscegenation laws. Mm-hmm. So they got creative and they married Mexican women because of course couldn't tell them apart. And so they married Mexican women. They started this whole settlement in Yuba City, California. And they couldn't own the land, but their kids could. So, their kids took deed to the land. And now we have fourth, fifth, sixth generation farmers there who, have been there for a long time. And it's not the farm world that you see when you, think about what rural America would look like, but it is a big chunk of rural America. And so, the hero in my book is Punjabi Mexican, and that's his hometown, and that's where, he's a farmer at heart. So, yeah, I think it is all just sort of art with character and development and everything like that.
Yeah, I definitely think that I have started with plot and what my characters do and what needs to happen in the story. And then I start to think about setting and what makes sense for what's going to happen in the story. And I have lived in Pennsylvania and I grew up in New York and now consider myself a DMV transplant. And so I've set my books in, at least in Pennsylvania and in the DMV area. I have not set a book in New York. And I think it's because I have yet to create a plot that I thought made sense and that warranted it being in New York. I know it's going to happen, but it isn't any of the stories that I've written so far. So I'm like waiting for that first story that I can really sort of show my love of the place where I grew up.
Awesome. And I know everyone is waiting to hear what your favorite tropes are. Suzanne, do you want to go first?
Oh, I love so many tropes. I don't even know where to start. I love enemies to lovers, friends to lovers. Oh gosh, forced proximity. I don't know. I can't choose.
All of the tropes at once.
I do like when there's sort of this dominant trope and then there's sort of like sub-tropes within the story, and it's almost like Easter eggs to see kind of all of the tropes that you can find. I do love that. And I also like when people take a slight twist to a trope as well. So when it's where it seems like it's a straightforward thing, but there's actually a lot of layers or nuance to the trope twist. And those are usually my favorite types of stories these days.
Yeah, the Russian
were all frozen on my screen, and so I was like,
my favorite trope is when the characters are video chatting and the screen
the Russian nesting doll of tropes is wonderful. It's like, oh, they're snowed in at a cabin. And you're like, oh, that's nice. And then it's like, oh, there's only one bed. And you're like, great.
Yes.
Are their clothes wet too? Do they have to take them off? Come out from warm? Oh, I love it. So I think it is just like there's just so many ways you can take it in romance, and I love to see the subversion of tropes and burying them inside each other, and I love like little winkies at people who are kind of in the know in our community. So I think it just tropes are wonderful. I'm pro-trope.
My favorite is probably forced proximity for exactly the reasons everybody said, is that everything else can grow out of that. Yeah. I mean, you can have friends to lovers, enemies to lovers. You can end up with a secret baby. You can have people who work together. It's just like the king daddy trope to me. You know, like you can throw in a best friend's baby sister, anything you want, you can build on top of forced proximity. And forced proximity is just great because it's just, you know, again, you're building this community, but when it's forced proximity, it is laser in on these people and kind of what they feel and what they think and what they're saying and how that has nothing to do with what they feel and think at that time. And I love reading that.
It's also just hard as like grown-ups to have forced proximity in real life. So it's nice when you write
You can make it happen.
I mean, like normally you're like, I don't want to be around this person. Goodbye, and you just leave. You're never forced to do it. So
where's a good snowstorm when you
I know. I'm in California. Where's my snowstorm?
We have a fun question here from Erica, and she says, Alisha, I love your tutorials on flower arrangement. What are everyone's hobbies outside of writing?
Well, I have trouble focusing, so I have a lot of hobbies that I'm kind of a jack of all trades. Right now, I started a YouTube cooking channel, so it's called Quarantine Cuisine. Nobody has to watch it, but you do. Hit that like button. But so I've been doing a lot of things just to keep busy, like, you know, but I think I've always just liked learning stuff, and I was the florist, you know, before I went to law school. So that's where my love of flower comes in.
Well, I was a singer at some point in my life. The way that my husband and I met was that I was auditioning for an a cappella group in college. And the way we met is hotly contested, but in any case, the story that I tell is that he acted as if he was already in the group with the clipboard in hand, taking down my information. And then when they said next, he sort of rolled in with his bike to audition. And I was like, wait a minute. Now, he didn't take my information, but he did make me think that he was in the group. But I have enjoyed singing for a really long time. And so that is something that I do often. And I have one of my girls is an amazing singer. And so we have a lot of fun with Hamilton.
That's awesome. Someone in the chat just said, Mia, we need to have karaoke for the next book. Exactly. Karaoke romance would be so cute.
I heard Mia sing a little thing before we went live, and she's an excellent singer. I don't think you knew anyone was listening.
We're not doing that today.
I'll be right back.
How about you, Suzanne, HelenKay, any new hobbies you've been picking up lately, or?
Well, like everyone else during quarantine time, I bake. So, like how many different kinds of breads and rolls a human can make? The answer is a lot. And I also am a huge, if there is a British crime show, I know about it, have seen about it, and can sit down and have a lengthy conversation with you about it.
For me, I've just been playing camp counselor and for my daughter because she's at home. That's what I do in my free time. We also got a hamster during quarantine, and I just for a while just got obsessed with this hamster, and I still am. You can tell my Instagram, it's gotten ridiculous. But at some point, somebody's like, "Oh, what have you been doing during quarantine?" I was like, "Oh, I just made little hamster versions of my books, and with pages." And,
so cute.
I've turned into that hamster woman. I don't even know if that exists, but it's that.
Can you put them closer to the camera?
adorable.
Yeah, and yes, and then the young adult book. But yeah,
Oh my goodness.
this quarantine has been an interesting time for me.
Where can we find these videos?
Oh, just on my Instagram. I just have a few that I've posted just because it's like the hamster is just entertaining to me, and I just randomly post things about her. Yeah, that's been my whole life. I've channeled it into this little animal.
That's awesome. Speaking of books, both normal sized and tiny, what's a book that you guys have read lately and loved? Or ever?
Ever.
I can go first. The most recent book that I'll say two really quickly. So You Had Me at Ola by Alexis Daria, which just came out last week, which was just, I don't know. It's a telenovela story. Basically, it's two actors who are working on a show that is sort of like Netflix, but not really. And this is sort of for both of them for different reasons, their big break. And there's a lot of tension. I don't say that's like spoilers, but I just think Alexis does a really good job of dealing with sort of these larger than life characters, but still making them relatable. And that book was just fun from beginning to end. And then the second book that I just finished last week is Like Lovers Do by Tracy Livesey, which comes out on the 26th of August. And that is a friends to lovers, fake dating. When we're talking about like tropes, it's got like all kinds of tropes in there. And the heroine is just confidence personified. And it's this friends to lovers journey that is very organic and sexy. There's a hammock scene, folks, and it is really skillfully done. And so if you're looking for books, I would definitely recommend those two.
I recently I'm in the middle of reading Alexis's You Had Me at Ola right now, and it's so cute. I mean, exactly like you said. Please don't spoil anything.
Right.
That's why I was like, should I leave? I don't know what she's gonna say. I read Suzanne's Loathe at First Sight. I really love that.
I can't hear anyone currently. Is everyone? Can everyone hear me?
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah. I can hear both of you.
Yeah, I can hear
you.
Can the chat people hear us?
Okay.
People watching?
Yeah, guys in the chat, is your stream still working?
Okay, they can hear.
You can hear us. Okay, awesome.
But I also
a few of you are still frozen for me. I can still see HelenKay and Suzanne. Do you guys want to talk about the books that you've read and loved recently?
I have one more. Sonali Dev's Recipe for Persuasion just came out, and it is the follow-up to Pride, Prejudice, and Other Flavors, and it's a great series that's just Austen retelling, done really well. So yeah.
Crowdcast is just not appreciating it today.
Yes.
No.
Uh-oh. Sam, can you hear me? I can go ahead with the recommendations, and hopefully it'll buffer.
Yeah, we can all hear
okay.
you. So.
I too finished Recipe for Persuasion. It was one of those times where I think foodie fiction was one of those things that I really needed during the pandemic. And Alisha, I read your book because I'm, on the STEM kick. So I read that one, and I'm finishing this one this weekend.
So sorry about that.
I just went ahead with my finishing this weekend, and again STEM kick. Sorry, this one. I picked that one up so that I can be all STEM this week and next week. Okay. Can you hear me?
So sorry, I've definitely lost my place. Thank you guys for sharing your favorite reads. Definitely always love
Can you hear me?
it.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
The book I most recently read, I read two. I read Farah Rashan's The Boyfriend Project, which I love because I love her. I love her writing, and I think it's really smart. And I love the way she builds kind of a story and the people in it and their connections to each other. And then I had given away the book Beach Read to two different people because somebody, people had recommended it, and I was kind of doing these care packages for people. Then I realized I hadn't bought it for myself. And I went ahead and bought it for me. And I just love the kind of romance writer, grumpy literary writer. How do we put these guys together? I just really enjoyed that book.
Awesome. I have a fun question that I would like to know the answer to personally. What are your guys' favorite snacks and coffee and teas to drink while you're both reading and writing?
Oh God, what isn't my favorite snack right now?
Yeah.
I really can't stop eating everything. I went to Trader Joe's today, and I think half my groceries were just snacks. I love anything crispy or crunchy. That's my weakness. So anything like potato chips or snack mix or anything like that, crispy, crunchy, salty. And anything chocolate. I don't know. I'll eat anything right now. Literally anything.
Yeah, I'm with you on the crispy crunchy. My family's in town, and I told them to get me chips, but they ate all of the chips that I requested before I got any, and that was not very nice.
That's a murdering offense right there. You don't tolerate that kind of insubordination.
I know. How about coffee? Are you guys coffee people, tea people, water people?
I'm definitely a coffee person, but I will say, I have, during quarantine, fallen in love with a cocktail that I've shared with just about everybody, which the contents I discovered through Zoraida Cordova. We were at a retreat, and she brought this rose syrup, and it was so good, and we were using it with champagne, and then I added... I did a mix of strawberry lemonade, this rose syrup, and rum, and it is fantastic. And my husband's like, do not buy that stuff ever again. We are going to something every night. So it is really good. So
I'm an iced coffee person, and I like to drink iced coffee while I'm drafting. And then I also like to go on walks to a local bakery, which probably defeats the purpose of going on the walk, but I get there and eat or grab a croissant or something in the case, and then bring it back and then eat it sometimes. And it's just nice to support local businesses while I also eat exactly what I need, all the butter and everything. I'm like Alisha, I will eat anything at this point right now.
Pretty much.
Yeah. One of my friends
mailed me, every morning I walk.
Yeah, one of my friends mailed me a care package from New York, and it was just full of cheese curls from New York. This Hare's cheese
nice.
Puffs. It was like 5 bags of them, and I was like, "That's ridiculous!" But I'm on my last bag, so I used all of them, ate them all.
So obviously we're all having an awesome chat here. All of you guys write romance, and you're really involved in the romance community. I was wondering, what is your favorite part of being part of the romance community? Mia, do you want to start?
I think I would say it's knowing that there's this group of people who share the same language, and kind of, I know it's my safe place, my safe space to like just immerse myself in romance and the genre and everything about it, and just kind of feel really positive about it. I don't necessarily get the sense that that's the case for every genre, or that if I were to be in a different space, that people would respond to my love of romance in the same way. And I've gotten beyond that, so that I don't really care. But it's lovely to be able to kind of just chat with people who understand how wonderful the genre is, how we have really created these stories, I think, that give people hope. And, I think particularly now, in the midst of what we've been dealing with for several months, just hearing from readers and knowing that what we do really affects them in a positive way, that people have really gotten through their days by reading romance. That is something that in the past I know firsthand, but it is a different thing completely when you hear other people say that about your work. And I think that's something about this community, that's about readers. And just, I find that a lot of the readers are really empathetic and wonderful and lovely. And I think it's romance. I think it's because we all come to the genre for hope and for the happily ever after. And I think it's a particular type of person that does that. And so we come with this kind of, language and love and empathy that really carries the genre and carries the community.
I can go. As a debut author, I've heard a lot of people say that books that are really important to them to get out of the reading slump has been romance. And so I think really the value of having a happily ever after right now is so important, as Mia was saying. And then overall, I think the romance community has been super kind to debuts as well. I've had so many people just help boost each other, and also, people who are very seasoned just reach out and just say, how can I help? Or just different things like that have really just really meant a lot for me as a debut. So I think that type of community around the romance community is just almost something that I haven't experienced before because I'm a debut, but it's also just been a relief almost being a debut in this particular year.
Yeah, I think that it is like a really welcoming community too. So, if there is somebody who's sort of new, I hope and I see it a lot where people are like, oh, you're new, let's get you started. And, like they want you, like, please come join us, be one of us, and so it is a community, I think, where if you find like your little group, you can be opened up to a whole new world. And, as Mia said, I think it is partially because we write about emotions, and so I think it is a certain kind of, empathetic, crowd, and it's just such a good community. It really is. At its best, it is the best.
It is.
I mean, absolutely. The readers are the best. I mean, when you try to tell people who write in other genres about romance readers, and you say to them, no, literally, they know what books are coming out on Tuesday. Like, they know what books are coming out because that's how much they care. Like, they get excited about books. If somebody recommends something to them outside of romance, they'll go read it because they're avid readers who love reading. And I think a lot of other genres, most other genres, don't have that. They don't have that kind of excitement that comes from the outside that actually helps to get authors excited too. For me, it was, before I started writing, I didn't know anybody who wrote. And now I know almost everybody I know writes, which is funny to me. And people that I'm incredibly close to, that I talk to every day, I almost never see, because we're writers and we live all across the country, but I think you build this group of people who you trust, and in the end, they are as excited for your career as you are, and I'm as excited for them as they are. And that's kind of a special thing, and we're always told that people don't act like that because they're only in for their self-interest. I have a group of people, and I think everybody here does, that I like they are as excited as I am when something good happens for me. And that's pretty special in a career that is, it's solitary, but getting through it, you need a core group of people to help you do that.
Awesome. Yeah, like what all you guys said, from what I've seen on social media, Romancelandia is like super welcoming, super supportive, super friendly. And of course, you guys also love to support independent bookstores like Mysterious Galaxy here. But we had another question in the chat for someone who's looking for some paranormal romance recs. So maybe we can give them some that they can buy from their favorite indie bookstore. Or if you guys who write paranormal romance want to mention some things that you've written too.
I think my quarantine comfort read has been like Nalini Singh's entire backlist. So I would start. I mean, if you've got another 5 months to go, we can start reading Nalini Singh now. But I would start for link purposes, I would start with Slave to Sensation with Mysterious Galaxy. If you want to pop that in there. It is the first book in the Side Changeling series, and it is. Nalini Singh does world building better than I think anybody. Like, she is just a master at it. So, start there and work your way out.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with the Nalini Singh rec. I recently read A Madness of Sunshine, and it was one of the first thrillers I've read, and I loved it so much.
Yeah, she can write everything. It's really good.
Mm-hmm. And we also have someone in the chat asking for some romances. If anyone has any favorites they would like to share.
I like
American Dreamer by Adriana Herrera. Fantastic. She's an Afro-Latina author who I think is just writing incredible stories. And that story is between someone who's really fighting for his dream as a food truck owner and a librarian, and I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it because it's a wonderful story and is so culturally rich, but also super sexy and romantic, and I love that. It's just everything that I love about contemporary romance all in one story. So definitely American Dreamer by Adriana Herrera.
I would recommend the author Annabeth Albert.
Yes.
She's written a lot of kind of sometimes nerdy, sometimes quirky. Her most recent I haven't read yet. I think it's Exceptionally Yours. I'm terrible with
Conventionally Yours.
Conventionally Yours.
Yeah.
And I think she's written across. I think she's written firemen. She's written maybe SEALs. She's written like guys who live in Portland. She's written a whole bunch. Like there's something for everyone. But I really like her style.
I was going to say that one too.
Mm-hmm. I'm a huge YA nut, so I just have to throw in my favorite male YA. It's called True Letters from a Fictional Life by Kevin Logan. It's just this adorable coming of age football player and like nerdy boy romance. It's so cute. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think. Believe me, I know. we did. Maybe we have time for one more question that was in the chat, and that was, what would you guys like to? Which books would you guys like to see turned into film and TV?
If Netflix is watching, all of mine.
Yeah. Yes, everybody here.
All of ours, HelenKay.
That's right. That is the right author answer. All of ours first, and then whatever else you would like to do.
That was easy.
Yeah.
But But I do have to say, I love when those come up on Twitter, right? Like when this book that maybe it's like sitting on your TBR pile or whatever, but you get so excited because, Daniel Day Kim buys your book, or,
Wow.
it's like,
So
it's
excited.
like these amazing, I did for so long. I think a lot of us would sit here and be like, why are you redoing some show from 30 years ago when there are all these great books? And recently, there seems to be a lot of options. So I'm pretty excited that a lot of these books are getting picked up, and I'm hoping they get the whole way through.
Yeah, the thing that we always joke about in Romancelandia is we talk about the necessity of having a romance writer in the writer's room. And so I'm hoping that's also the next step, is that people are like, okay, you want to write, because I just feel like there's so many stories that in the hands of a romance writer, they would have gone differently, and it would have been so better.
Yeah. Whatever that movie is where she picks Jack Nicholson over Keanu Reeves. I'm just saying that would have ended differently.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time to talk to us today. I had a great time. I hope you guys did as well. Do each of you just want to go around and say where everyone can find you and the latest book of yours that they can check out? Mia, do you want to start?
Sure. Let's see. You can find me on Twitter all the time, unfortunately. I should be writing books, but you can find me there, and on Instagram. Not so much on Facebook, but I'm around. My latest book is The Worst Best Man, Enemies to Lovers, and the heroine, who is an up-and-coming wedding planner, ends up having to interview for a really important job, and to do so she has to work with a marketing team, and the marketing team consists of her ex-fiance and his younger brother. Spoiler alert, she ends up with the younger brother.
Suzanne.
Oh, the human-sized version of this book. The hamster version. This one comes out in, it's also on my shelf, August 18th, so on Tuesday. It's about a Korean-American video game producer who is tasked with releasing a controversial video game, all while being antagonized by everyone around her, including the MBA intern, who happens to be the CEO's nephew. You can find me on Twitter at Suzanne Park, on Instagram at Suzanne Park as well, where you can also see videos of my hamster. And I think I'm on Facebook as well at Suzanne Park Comedy.
Awesome. Alisha?
Yeah, you can find me also on Twitter too much at Alisha Rai. I'm on Instagram as Alisha Rai Writes, and then I'm on TikTok as the real Alisha Rai. And also YouTube on Quarantine Cuisine. And I want to stab Facebook in the face, so you'll never see me there. My latest book is Girl Gone Viral. It's out now. And my upcoming book is coming out February of next year. It's called First Comes Like, and it's about an influencer who falls in love with this guy, this very famous Bollywood actor who's DMing her. And he happens to come to Hollywood to restart, to launch his Hollywood debut. And he walks up to him and he has no idea who she is. Luckily, sparks still fly, and they work it out. But that is First Comes Life, and it comes out in February.
Awesome. And HelenKay?
I am usually way too often on Twitter at HelenKay Dimon, and I'm on Instagram, and I think that's HK Dimon because I like to make things difficult. It's hard to find me for some reason. I'm so good at promo. My latest romance is The Secret She Keeps, and it's one of those that takes place on this kind of island where people go to start over, and the hero is there getting over, trying to come to terms with the murder of his sister, and the heroine is actually the grumpy recluse who doesn't want to connect with anyone. So that was great fun to write. So he wants to rescue her, and she's like, I don't think so. So I enjoyed that. And my next book actually is the domestic suspense under a different name. It's called Pretty Little Wife, and that comes out at the end of December. So you'll read that, and then that will make you rush back to romance for hope again.
Amazing. And if anyone's interested, you can find Frolic all over the place on Frolic. We have lots of fun interviews, op-eds written by authors, we have a lot of fun over there. So you guys can check us out as well.
And I just wanted to say thank you. Hopefully there's not still sound issues going on, but I really love all of your work. I know I didn't get to say that early on, and I really appreciate everyone's patience with us. This has been wonderful. I've got to go finish Suzanne's book. I'm like halfway through right now. I just finished Girl Gone Viral a couple weeks ago, so I'm really excited about making my way through them. Thank you, everybody, and please, hopefully we'll see you again soon. Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye.